This is our new Infinity router table for the Port City Makerspace wood shop. This video is going to talk about how to use this machine. First thing we'll cover is basic features. So inside the router table is a 3¼ horsepower router, the variable speed, and an on-off switch that is a safety interlock. There's also an external on-off switch. There's a router lift mechanism for getting your bit to the right height. Part of the system is a 1-wrench bit change system, which we'll talk about how to use. There's also extension wings to allow you to work on much larger workpieces, and an adjustable fence for supporting your work. And another support for your work is a little device called a pin starter, which we'll also talk about. Part of the table surface here has a microdot texture to allow it to have a very low friction surface. Below the cabinet is a dust cube, which will help with effective collection of dust, which connects both through the table and through the fence. There are also, this is a setup on a cart, so there are wheels below that have locking casters. You can lock it in place when you're working on it and release them when you're done and need to store it back against the wall. And then there are bit storage boxes that will be below the cart here for all your 1/4 and 1/2 inch bits, as well as the tools and accessories to operate this machine. To talk about a few safety points before how to set this up, one thing you want to make sure, if you're using the extension wings, you want to make sure that these are fully open and locked. So pressing down on this part of the mechanism here on both sides is important to make sure it's nice and stable. For safety gear, you want to make sure to be wearing your safety glasses. There are potential flying objects with this. It's also a pretty loud machine, so we do encourage you to use hearing protection, earmuffs, earplugs. When operating, you want to avoid getting your hands too close because there's a sharp rotating bit. So you want to use these push blocks when appropriate to give yourself distance from your tool bit there. And let's see, the rotation that the bit moves is a counterclockwise rotation. So when you're feeding material, you're going to be feeding from right to left. All right, so first things first, to do your height adjustment, we have the table height winder here. So this goes in the opening of the table here. When inserting it, you want to go as straight as possible. You might have to look through the cabinet door below, and then you'll feel it grab onto the screw. That feels pretty locked in there. And you can rotate that clockwise lower, counterclockwise to raise. So if you're installing a bit, before we do much more with height adjustment, you need to open up the cabinet below. Make sure the machine's already off before you start doing this. And then inside the cabinet on the right-hand side, there's the on-off switch. So you want to make sure that the switch is in the off position. So right now I just switched it off, and then there's a little plastic slide cover that you want to make sure is also closed. And then you're able to lift the router all the way up. So once it's all the way in the top position, there will be a little locking pin that you'll see engage. If it's not fully engaged, you may need to rotate the spindle a little bit until you hear it click, just like that. And now you should be able to loosen the nut with the wrench, if it's already tightened down. All right, so with the locking pin engaged, you can loosen the bit, possibly by hand or use the wrench if necessary. Install your bit. Tighten your bit back down. I usually do it by hand, and then use the wrench to give it a nice firm tightening. Not too hard, because you do need to take it back off afterwards. And then once you're ready to operate, lower this to a height appropriate for your work. You want to install one of the red cover plates that's appropriate for your bit. Choosing the smallest one necessary, both for safety and for good dust collection. You want to adjust remove your table height winder. To tighten the plastic collar here, you want to use the collar wrench. Rotate that until it says tightened. I actually loosened it, so if you follow the arrows that are printed on it, you will tighten it down so it's nice and secure. To adjust your speed, there's a little orange dial right here. So if you rotate it that way, it should be reducing the speed. To the left, should increase the speed. Once you've got your bit in, especially for pattern bits, you want to make sure to adjust your fence so it's aligned properly. So you can loosen these locking knobs, slide it forward into place. For pattern bits, you want to align to the front bearing here, so it helps to take a straight edge, lay it across both sides of the fence, and move it until it just touches all three surfaces with no gaps in between. Okay, lock it down. The two face plates here adjust back and forth to give you more or less clearance for your bit. So make sure to loosen those with the Phillips screwdriver. Slide that in so it reduces the available gap, but not so close that it's touching the bit. Tighten it back down. Do that on both sides. You gotta make sure it's not gonna hit. Tighten back down. And then this upper plastic guard here, you want to lower to just above your workpiece. Make sure it's slightly above the bit and slightly above your material. Lock that down. And you're about ready to go. So before you turn your router on, you want to make sure to turn on your dust collection. So for this router table, we have a port that connects to the fence that draws air through here. We also have the dust cube that pulls through the table. And that ultimately connects to our main dust collection system through a port back there, which should draw everything out of the chamber, so there shouldn't be much that collects in here. So, assuming the router is on, basic way to set it up is to right your piece against the fence, make sure it sits flat. For this piece, I'll use push blocks to guide it through, and gently get it started, and just keep guiding it through. If you want to use a pattern or a template that's got contours, what you can do is get the fence out of the way and use the pin start. Slide this back and install the pin start. Just this little threaded pin that goes on either side of the table here. And we'll install it on the right side since that's the direction we normally feed from. And you can use that instead as your support piece, be able to guide up against that, be able to pivot slowly and have more control when working with patterns in different shapes. To actually turn the router on, once it's in the right position, I want to of course plug the machine in. For this demonstration I will, but you want to go inside the cabinet, go to that switch that's on the side here, slide back the cover and turn that on, and then want to use the external on switch here and press real hard and turn that on too, and that should get the router spinning. And then turn it back off, you can just hit this big red stop button here. Once you're done routing, you want to make sure to leave the machine cleaner than you found it. So you want to take the bit out. To do that, we'll take the collar off and our wrench. Go ahead and take that pin start out as well. Take the collar off, loosen it, and then you can either use this and try to pull in one direction to lift it out, or you use your finger. You want to raise the router up. Before we do that, we actually have to reach inside the cabinet and turn the router off on the side. So reach back in there, turn that off. And we want to grab our table height winder, insert it into usual location until it engages. Raise up all the way until we get that locking pin engaged again. And again, you might have to rotate it to get it to properly engage. And then use your single wrench to loosen your bit. Pretty often when you loosen it, you'll have to kind of loosen it twice. Take your bit out, take your table winder out, and put everything away, clean it up, and that should be it.